Hey everyone, this is the Mind Workshop Podcast. I'm your host, Victor Dwyer, and we have a really special guest on. And today we're going to be talking about how you really don't need to live with habits because it makes you where you have a life of kind of spontaneity, where you have where you can just kind of do whatever. And it's really interesting because I'm one that always designs my habits and making sure that I'm always checking off all my habits. So we're gonna have a kind of a mind shift in the way we look at this. So I'm super excited. So please tell us before we get started. Tell us the audience how you got into this and what kind of gets you here.
Hello, everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you so much for having me, Victor.
Yep.
Totally awesome. I love it when people are open to that expansion of the mindset around the word habits. It really came to this space in my own work, but also in the creation development of my own private practice over the course of the last 10 years. And so the evidence has been revealed to me time and time and time again, one person at a time, um, and in my own life. So if we look at just to give you guys the idea of where I'm coming from as to why living without habits fixes everything, right? If we look at the definition of the word habit, it's impulsive action without a lot of thought. Okay,
Yeah.
so if you're working out and you are doing so without a lot of thought, you're not connected to the muscles in your biceps that you're doing curls. You're going through the motions. But the difference of the person that is actually engaged and connected and there with the purpose and the focus and the intention of working their biceps is going to get much better results. So we also don't want to be so rigidly tied to things having to happen at a set time of day, right? Like my whole life crumbles if I can't make it to that 6 a.m. spin class. I am then irritated, agitated, annoyed, frustrated, bothered the entire day. Like that is an inappropriate reliance on something outside of ourselves, mind, body, spirit, to make ourselves, to make the day right. It's okay to desire to exercise every day, so long as it's not done in an obsessive way. Meaning when your daughter Sally gets sick and you can't go to the 6 a.m. class, it doesn't derail everything else about your day. It just means that you get to add, edit, delete, change, shift, morph your schedule and find a time where you can after you take care of things, right? So we need to be less rigid and less derailed when life happens.
Mm-hmm. So what about when it comes down to productivity? So you talked about working out as a habit, and obviously that really it's a very positive habit to have in your life. And when it comes down to building that habit, let's say if my overall goal is to get fit. Okay, let's just say that's my goal, and obviously I would have to develop a habit of working out at some level, and then needing that habit to be there. So what would you say about that? If my goal is to get fit and I need to develop the habit to work out, um, what would be your opinion on that then?
So the very first thing we want to do is we want to have that aspiration to be a fit being, right? To live the healthiest life that I can, the healthiest version that I can create. But we don't want to do it in a habitual way because then we're doing it impulsively without a lot of thought. We want to create a lifestyle and we want to have routine, but a flexible routine. So my lifestyle, right, is very focused on being a physically healthy and fit being. But I don't have a regimented workout schedule. There's nothing regimented about it whatsoever. But, right, my aspiration is to be that. So my lifestyle gets created in a way that is very, I don't know, malleable,
Yeah.
right? So it's, look at my schedule for the week and okay, great. Where am I going to put my time for me in? And so it doesn't necessarily have to be 6 a.m. every day. It could be, right, 3 p.m. here, 2 p.m. there, and 7 p.m. over here, and those are my days that I go to the gym. On all the other days, right? Like I'm just going to go take a walk after dinner, or I'm going to go on a hike on Saturday, or I'm going to do something else, right? Like we incorporate, different things, and really create a lifestyle versus
Got it. So, from an
habit.
efficiency standpoint, I usually design my habits around like being efficient. So, for example, like this is literally my habit. So, as soon as I wake up, I don't look at my phone. I'm not allowed to look at my phone. I put it in my pocket just in case someone calls me or something, and then I go stretch my body, and then from there I meditate, and then I say three things I'm grateful for, and then I basically write on my whiteboard, basically saying like, hey, this is how much sleep I got, sleep tracking and things like that. Then I say my goals that I'm going for that particular week, and then I brush my teeth and do all that good jazz. So I've designed it in a way that's like very helpful for me to start my day, but
Mhm.
also making it where I can kind of like do it in an efficient way as well, rather than doing it all sporadically. So, what are your thoughts on that? Like, should I try? Are you saying to do them all in different orders, to do it in different ways, to make it
Not at
more
all.
sporadic?
Not at all. In fact, I like the way that you start your day with intention, right? Like we set our day up with an intention. So if we look at the activities that you do routinely in the morning, notice I'm not using the word habit, but we do them routinely in the morning. You do them with intention.
Hmm.
So it's I'm stretching. I'm the first thing that I do in the morning is I connect with my body, right? I connect with my body by stretching. And then, meditation. I connect with what my heart and my heart, my soul, and my mind. And I'm doing that with an intention, right?
Mhm.
To set my mindset for the day, the approach, whatever. So when I'm working with my clients, it's set your day up with an intention. So whatever those things look like, instead of saying, like this is the habitual way that I do things, because then we get stuck in that inability to shift it or change it up. So
Yeah.
we set our day up with an intention, and then we have a routine carved out for that day. We have an approach to the day. We have an attitude or a demeanor for the day, and we're choosing that. And then we have activities that we go and do throughout the day. It's just the way that you connect with it. I can
Yeah.
I can do 11 hours of back-to-back clinical sessions and never once feel overwhelmed, overloaded, etc., because I do one at a time. And it's I don't know who's next because I'm right here, right? And I have 60 seconds in between each one to clear my mind and go to the next person. It's There's nothing habitual about it. It's very purposeful and filled with intention.
Yeah. And I think also knowing yourself helps. Like, for example, I used to do like 4 hours of podcast back to back. And it's because I generally love talking to people, understanding their perspective. And that makes it where it's fun for me as well. So, me knowing that, I can talk to someone for 14 hours a day. I usually do. Like, I go from podcasts, then I go to dinner with my family, then I go country dancing, where I'm talking to people like basically the whole time.
That's awesome.
And like, it's just a big part of me where I just really love talking to people. And so me knowing that, it makes it where it's a lot easier to set those intentions to put me in spaces where I want to either get better at it. And I design all my habits around it. And I even create like a habit like point system. So for every like different habit I get 1 point. For every 10 points I get one reward, one token. And with that token, I can get like things I normally don't allow myself to eat. So I might have a Rice Krispie treat with that one token. I might
Ooh.
have a scoop of my protein peanut butter. I love peanut butter. Like I might get like a reward myself with that because I've earned it at that point. So that's kind of how I design my habits and my routines that I kind of do, and I give myself rewards based off of those things.
That's interesting. It's one
Yeah.
of the first approaches that I, generally speaking, look to remove from a client's life is is that external reward system. Because if
Mhm.
we think about it, we're giving an emotional purpose to something outside of us to make us feel whatever, peace, joy, comfort, relief, value, validity, worthiness, like, ooh, I'm good, right? Like the pat on the back is really what we want. We want that internal acknowledgement of, awesome, man, I'm rocking it today. I'm on fire. I'm smoking. That doesn't mean I get to go have, a dish of ice cream, right? That's
Mhm.
giving it an emotional purpose. And so, and of course, I work with a lot of folks, right, that have, um, we'll say, high levels of attachment to those external rewards, whether that's Ben and Jerry's, overeating, that kind of thing, a food
Yeah.
addiction, or that reliance on alcohol, right? Like, I've had a long, stressful day. I got everything done. I deserve a glass of wine. Well, no, right? Like, there should be zero emotional purpose with a glass of wine.
Mhm.
A glass of wine should be enjoyed because it pairs well with the steak you're about to sit down and eat.
So how do you spike that dopamine reward, or how do you,
Mhm.
like, I understand the pat on the back thing, but if you're trying, for example, I everything else is pretty easy, but when it comes down to creating content, it is so hard for me, like, not like this type of content, but like me grabbing my phone and talking about a 60-second thing about a certain topic. It's very hard for me to get motivated behind that. So I've associated me doing the content with me getting a scoop of peanut butter. So now, like, basically my brain goes, yay, like when I create content, because my brain knows that when I
Why do
create
you need
content,
your
I get a
brain to
scoop of
go
peanut butter.
yay?
Yay! Yeah, so my brain gets
Like,
excited
why?
about it.
I know, but why do we need it to go yay? So if we think about, like, if it's, and I get it, we want to celebrate ourselves and we want to feel good about ourselves.
Mm-hmm.
But so if we're talking about, again, that whole reward system, like, you have to ask yourself, why do I need this big dopamine rush? Because I finished my content. I finished my content, and and I'm connected with it, and it is illustrating and highlighting my true intention for connecting with people, and so that yay comes when people are raising their hand and saying, "Wow, thank you, Victor, so much," because it
Mm-hmm.
touched my soul. And but then we still don't even want to rely on that because we don't want to get down because people didn't give us a thumbs up or a heart on social media. Like, we have to
Yeah.
quit relying on things outside of us to bring us peace, joy, comfort, relief, value, validity, and worthiness. Like, we just have to. It has to come in from inside. That's where folks really, get into trouble. Because they find themselves feeling undervalued, dismissed, underappreciated, etc., because they're not getting a brownie button every time they do something good.
So, question for you is, how would someone get motivated toward a habit they hate? Like, for example, the most common one is working out. Most people hate working out. They can't stand it. Like, the beginning of the year, they go, "I'm gonna work out every single day. That's my New Year's resolution." And then, like, I think it's like 80% of them actually end up quitting. Um, so, question to you is, how can someone get motivated toward a habit that is difficult for them at that point? If you're taking away the reward and you have to find that intrinsically, how
But
can you still stay motivated toward that?
you're not taking away the reward, because the reward is, I'm going to be healthy. Um,
Yeah.
and so it's getting that as the acceptance, right? Like, I don't need a reward because I exercise. My reward is living longer, and having more energy and more stamina, etc. That is the reward. But I think that where you're, one of the points that you're making here is an extremely important one for people to hear and understand. You don't have to like working out. You don't actually have to work out. Nobody ever has to step foot in a gym. We need to create a lifestyle. So, one, ditch New Year's resolutions, get rid of them. They
Yeah.
just set you up for failure, because here's the deal. Most people are like, I'm going to quit drinking this year, right? Like, la, la, la. Well, the second it hits midnight and you're still intoxicated, you've already failed. So, anyway,
Yeah.
That's just a hard, cold truth about that one. But because you already, started the year out intoxicated. But they're just rigid. They set you up for failure. If you want to lose weight, get in better shape, etc., you are better served with saying what, creating lifelong manageable and maintainable um, lifestyles, routines, right? So, and not habits. Because that again is a pressure to perform. Not goals, because goals you either hit or miss, right? Aspirations. So if you aspire to lose 50 pounds, don't set a date to it, right? Like, what can I add to my life that is going to contribute to that? If it is unrealistic to think that somebody is going to create a lifestyle that is, I'm going to exercise 3 hours a day, 6 days a week. That's not lifelong, manageable, maintainable. I know because I used to work out 6 days a week, 3 hours a day for a year. And then after that, right? Like I got through it, but so we age and life changes, etc. So physical activity that we aspire to have in our lives, right? Like being physically active 3 days a week is manageable and maintainable. If we get a fourth or a fifth day in there, that's bonus. But if we say, I need to, exercise 5 days a week and we only hit 3, now we're letting ourselves down in a cognitive emotional way, right? So then we start beating ourselves up, and then we get into those emotional things. Well, screw it, I didn't do it. I already missed the days, so I'm not going to do it at all. I'll start again next week, and I'm just going to eat Ben and Jerry's, or whatever it is. And so instead of doing that, right? Like I'm going to eat, I'm going to eat healthy, whatever, Monday through Friday, and on Saturday and Sunday, I'm going to allow myself to have whatever I want. And 3 days a week, I'm going to, get physical activity, hopefully 4, like I aspire for 4, but 3 is acceptable. And you wait a year later, you're going to have already physically changed. Weight will be down. You'll be more fit. You'll have more energy. Your rewards are going to be there, but quit putting pressure to perform on yourself. I did this. I'm proof positive. I did this. I lost 30 pounds and I haven't seen it since.
Yeah, and I love that. So, question for you is, like, I understand the lifestyle and doing it more as a lifestyle. I understand that piece of it. But when it comes down to like the short, so I understand the benefits of having in your mind the long term rewards. So, like, for example, I'm working out to get more fit long term. But from a short term perspective, it's very hard to become motivated toward that unless you really do enjoy it. So for the like, for example, working out, like when you first start working out, it even sucks even more because the very beginning you're like sore and crap like that. So how can you be more intrinsically motivated even on the short term? So, like, because I understand you're having in the back of your mind the
What
long
it
term
has to,
benefits.
the desire has to be there. Like if the true desire isn't there, right? Like, so what I do with my clients is we look at what the intention is, like what is really driving this. And is it because you're comparing yourself? Because I have a lot of clients that come to me and say, I want to be bikini ready, right? And I'm like, let's go to Target, right? There's bikinis hanging on the rack. I guarantee you they got one in your size. You'll be ready. No, 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 that's not what I mean. Like, I don't, like, well, let's be more specific. You've got to define what bikini ready means to you, and why is it important to you, right? And then how realistic is that aspiration? What could you live with instead, right? Like quit setting yourself up to fail. And then so how much you want, and I guarantee you every single time with my client, the aspiration is never to be bikini ready. It's really, I just want to be more fit and more toned. And I want to feel good about myself when I look in the mirror. So we throw away some magazine, you know, image of what they need to look like, because guess what? You aren't that person, and we're all unique individual beings. We all have our own shapes and sizes, right? Like I can stand next to somebody that weighs 20 pounds more than I do, but because their body structure, right? Like you would think we weigh the same, and we don't, right? So we have to quit comparing and just look at, who I am, etc. And so when you make that connection with, what, I just really want to feel confident in a bathing suit at the lake this coming summer, right? Well, okay, we don't have a lot of time, so we got to do some emotional time sets around that, and we create it in a way that's not filled with pressure, because the worst thing for a human psyche and emotional stability and well-being is to fail, right? So if the motivation, right, is really just, if the motivation is appropriate, right? If the
Yeah.
motivation is appropriate, then it will come, and it will look a whole lot different. And we
Yeah.
could have an entire workshop around that.
Yeah. So question for you is, I want to, you talked about intention. And when it comes down to
Mhm.
intention, to like understand like the reason why, like asking yourself why behind the intention. And the reason why I say that is because most of us are either pushing to go towards something or running away from something. And I thought I used to love working out. I was like, oh yeah, I just love working out. I love getting fit. And then I asked myself, like I started realizing that no matter how skinny I got, I would always think I'm fat. So it caused me to work out harder and harder and harder, and I'd ask myself why, like why, and then I realized there's a voice inside of me that's constantly telling me I'm fat, and it's because of the inner insecurities I have that I wasn't comfortable with who I was, and that was the reason why I was working out. It wasn't having anything to do with anything else. And that's where it's important to really question the intention of why behind that intention. So that way you can figure out, why am I doing this? Am I doing it to try to impress other people? Because I always thought like, oh, once I looked like that, then someone can love me. Then I can love myself. And that's like, I know you have to love yourself for who you are rather than trying to get that external validation. And so
Mhm.
it's really important to also like question the why behind the intentions as well.
Well, 100%. Again, back to that locus of control, external versus internal drive,
Yeah.
right? So yes, 100%. And this is a case that, that one I've lived with, having body dysmorphia, right? Like I can absolutely show up in a mirror and see myself completely differently than I thought about myself the whole day if I look at it in the wrong way. Um, so, so yes, like we have to really understand what that intention is, and then we have to make sure that that intention is, again, appropriate.
Mhm. Yeah, I totally agree with that. And I want to talk about like a little bit about entrepreneurship because I feel like they have the most when it comes down to like habits, and then also when it comes down to working without intention. Let's just say that. I know a lot of entrepreneurs that work themselves till they get burned out and um, basically burn themselves into the ground, basically. And I feel
Mhm.
like they have the most insecure, like one of the biggest insecurities out there, because they're the hardest workers, and it's usually because they're running away from something so strong. Because I'm a victim of this too. I'm not saying all entrepreneurs are like that, but I was a victim. I was working 14 hours a day because every second I didn't work, I would criticize myself for not working. So
Mhm.
what are your thoughts on entrepreneurs and when it comes down to intentions within the way they work?
Wow, that's a big, big, big question. And I work with a lot of entrepreneurs, um, on that perfectionism and overwhelm that, just really just creates a whiteout and an inability to actually get any forward moving momentum. And part of the biggest issues, the biggest hurdle in even getting them in my room, is getting them to feel comfortable enough to ask for help, because they don't want anybody, they're afraid somebody might find out that they're not perfect, and everything in their life isn't perfect, because they're this entrepreneur whatever, right? Whether it's a mindset guru, a business coach, or a lifestyle, whatever, right? Like they don't ever want to, so they sit there. And so what they really don't understand is that there's this level of emotional intelligence that we didn't know we didn't have. And I'm here to raise my hand. I'm an entrepreneur. I'm a business owner. I built this thing from the ground up. And I had a lot of perfectionism issues my entire life. I think I came out of the womb that way. And there was a lot of overwhelm and a lot of, fear of failure to launch, stage fright, all the things, right? Like, oh my goodness, like you couldn't pay me to get on a stage for the longest time, let alone show up for something like this, right? But the thing is there's a level of emotional intelligence we didn't know we didn't have. In fact, a lot of times people say, oh, I know that. I know all about that. I have that. But when we get in there and we start studying it, no, you don't, because you have the societal view of what these things are and what they represent. I have emotional intelligence. It's not an innate talent. It is something that has to be learned. It has to be cultivated. It has to be nurtured. It has to be conditioned. And we didn't get it in school. And guess what? Your parents had no idea, right? Because Victor, I'm pretty sure like I'm old enough to have been your parent. I had no idea when I was raising my kids, right? So depending upon your age, you had no idea. And guess what? Your parents, if you're in your 30s, 20s, right? Like your parents are just now learning about emotional intelligence right now. So you don't know what you don't know, but once you do, everything changes. And I'm watching it happen and unfold on a daily basis, but you've got to be willing to lean in and learn the practical application of the psychological skill sets and tactics that allow you to have unshakable emotional stability, meaning I got no thumbs up on that post. I'm not going to go sit in my room and cry or freeze and revamp my entire business over it, right? People do that. They're like, oh, this isn't working. I only got 3 signups. This isn't working. I got to revamp it all. And they go back to the drawing board and they go back to scratch. And it's like, no, right? Like quit looking at that. Like, how connected are you with the work that you're doing and the gift that you have to give? And how can we get you to be connected to it better? Anyway.
Yeah.
I think I answered your question.
Yeah, and I also see that being a big problem for male entrepreneurs as well, because
Yes.
as a male that goes through going through childhood, we are told like, oh, big boys don't cry, don't feel pain, like it's gonna be okay, and that gets kind of adopted into our mind, and we say like when we do feel pain or we do feel sadness and we do want to cry, like we shame that emotion. And so then we repress it in there. But we have to realize these are normal human emotions that everyone has, and it's okay to repress them. So it's okay to fail. It's okay to feel pain. It's okay to feel sadness. And I think a lot of male entrepreneurs out there, they suppress it inside of them, saying, "No, I can't feel that. No, I'm not supposed to feel this emotion." And it comes out in very sometimes dangerous ways when that happens. And so I think it's really important to express those emotions and realize that every human does. It's totally normal. And then it goes a long way for you.
I think that was a very hypercritical fact to bring to the table, right? Like I work with men and women. I market to women because men come, right? They come, but they come in smaller numbers, but they actually get the height, they actually move through it so quick. It's like, awesome. And they go, right? But you're right. So if we look statistically, 1 in every 10 people with an eating disorder is a male. But we don't talk about eating disorders with men, right? Like we talk about it, with women, we think of anorexia, we think of binge eating. Like how many, go on Canva and look for pictures of, binge eating or eating disorders, right? And see how many of those images are proportionately women versus male, right? Like just even in society. So we look at that also. So when we think of a business person, right? Like a highly successful, highly, like whatever your vision of it is, highly successful. Most people think when they think of business, entrepreneurship, et cetera, they think male. when they think, like who's the guru, who's the teacher, who's the, and so, but now women are coming up to that, but men are still afraid to like show up as anything less than I got this.
Yeah.
Right. Like I know, like I've done so many businesses in my life. I know everything, right? Like whatever, like I've met plenty of women that are that way also. But if if we look at it as a general rule, right? People in general are afraid to raise their hand. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've hosted countless events that people will register for just so they can get the replay because they won't show up in the room, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm not coming into the room admitting, right, that I'm having some issues dealing with my emotions.
Mm-hmm.
Why not? Why not? Why not come live and get the help or to get the
Yeah.
tools? It's just coming to get tools. It's just tools.
Mm-hmm.
That's all it is. Instead
And
of
I think,
thinking of it as a big psychotherapy thing. It's cognitive tools that are psychological in nature.
yeah, and I think it also comes down to like ego, and the reason why a lot of men develop that ego is because of the belief that they have to be always high value. And I used to think that as well, where I thought a girl could not love me unless I was super high value man, and that made it where I would act more macho, like, oh, I don't need to feel pain, like I don't, not guy, big boys don't cry, like type of thing, and I created
Mhm.
more like high value persona of myself, so that way, oh, a woman can love this version of me.
Right.
And then I realized, like, hey, like a woman can love me for exactly who I am right now. I don't have to be this high value BS version of myself in order for that to happen. And I made a post about that, and guys were like, no, like you have to be a high value version of yourself, or a woman will never love you if you have money. If a woman will never love you if you don't have a car. And I was like, crap, guys really think like this. And so that's where it's like, it's really important to go against that and say, hey, a woman can love you for exactly who you are right now. It's a big
I think
conversation.
I think that the best way to approach this thing called living is to do so open, honest, genuine, transparent, and authentic in all things that you do, say, feel, believe, whatever, right? Because it's as soon as we start putting on those personas, putting on those facades, putting on the show, acting as if, all of those things, and just really takes away that innocent confidence we have as a child of I can be anything, of I am lovable, I can be seen. And I don't know, for some of us, we lost that childhood innocence a lot younger than we ever should have. And I get that, but there is repair and healing from that. There's a way to
Yep.
get back to that. I am enough. And the thing that I have to offer, the thing that I have to bring to the table is valuable and it's valid and it's worth being experienced. And then accept that it's only valuable and valid to those that it speaks to. Quit trying to bring people in that what you do, how you say it, speaks to them. Like I'm an acquired taste, right? Like everybody's not beating down my door. The people that come understand what I say. They feel my passion. They get me when I show it up into a room, and those are the people I want to work with. I don't want to try to teach you a foreign language,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
Like we have to connect mind, body, like on an emotional level. And so, you know, we always want to be seeking somebody that speaks our language, not somebody that has a promise that their method, their modality, their whatever is going to take us to a place where we are, living like some celebrity, because we're comparing ourselves to something else, right? Like you can walk into one of Tony Robbins things and you can see like he's amazing, right? Like I don't know what his stats are, but just if we're just gonna roll with it because it was the first guru that fell off my tongue, right? But you fill a room with thousands of people, right? Thousands of those people don't get the results that they went there for. Some do, a small percentage do,
Mm-hmm.
but the others went there to get somebody else's outcome, right? Like,
Yeah.
ooh,
True.
I want to be like that person instead of creating the outcome that was going to be an elevated version for them. And so when we try to fit our lives into somebody else's method or modality, it doesn't serve us. But when we take that method, that modality, that concept, that whatever, and we incorporate it into our life in a way that's going to serve us, that's when we grow.
Yeah. And I also think it's so important to ask why behind those whatever goals you want. Like when you're pointing your finger and say, "Hey, I want to be like Tony Robbins." It's like, "Okay, cool. Why?" It's like, "Oh, because so many people listen to him." It's like, "Okay, why? Why do you want to be listened to?" It's like, "Oh, because they love him." Okay, it's like, "Okay, so you're looking for
So
self-love from external factors to actually love yourself." So, it's really important to always like question the whys behind what your goals are, and you'll realize most of it just comes down to fear of something, fear of people not loving you, fear of not being loving yourself, fear of like everything kind of always goes down to a fear of something. And until you get to that level, then you're like, wow, every single goal I have, I was just running away from something. So, which is funny because every insecurity I tackle and counter, I get less motivated. Like it's like because like before, for example, let's just use working out. It's like I used to work out like crazy, like work out 3 hours a day, and then once I figured out I was just working out because it's my lack of comfort of myself, and then I'm like, I don't even work out anymore. I just stretch. Literally, I just go in the morning, stretch, and then I leave. And it's like, that's all I really need to do. And so I become more relaxed, more like monk like in my the way I operate, just because like I'm not like this like hustle, hustle, hustle. I'm like, it's kind of just okay. I don't
it
always
is.
need to work hard every single second.
No. It's, hey, is there anything that I have on my to-do list that must be done today? And if it must be done today, have I validated that I actually, or check, check to make sure it's not just a pressure, right? Like, that no, this actually, needs to be done today. So then what you got to start with, right? Like I got to
Yeah.
do this, this, and this. But then after that, like relax. Like everything else is a desire after that. Like I want to connect with more people. I want to, get outside in nature. I want to, whatever. But quit getting sucked into the rabbit hole of constantly creating whatever. Like we feel like, oh, we got to create, the next big thing, and all you're doing is looking to, create the next bright shiny object for the next person that's, looking for that has bright shiny object syndrome. Um, you know,
Yeah.
like live, allow yourself to live, like be one mindful, live this moment, be present. If you're working out, but you're thinking about the 10 things on your list, you're not connected with working out. You might as well not even be there.
Yeah. And I wanted to ask you this is what would be your one piece of advice for an entrepreneur with insecurities?
Hmm. Find a person that speaks your language that will teach you true emotional intelligence so that you can find that internal confidence. Um, Insecurities are real and they stemmed from somewhere. It's different for every single person, right? Like it's literally different for every single individual being. So don't find some cookie cutter, I don't know, run of the mill something and say, oh, I'm just going to fake it till I make it. Go learn what happened for you internally that brought your confidence down, and then learn the actual psychological skill sets, tools, tips, tactics that will turn it around, and then have a guide that can teach you the practical application in your life, that is willing to stand with you and watch over you and point out the little nuances so you don't miss any little tweak or an adjustment. I mean, literally, I as a master coach, right? Like my job, I liken very much to my swim team coach, right? I was a junior Olympic swimmer. His job was to stand over the pool and
Mhm.
watch every little nuance about my stroke of whatever event that I was training to compete, right? So that if there was any little, if my hands were separated in a way that would slow my time down, to, make sure to point it out. If I was going to get disqualified because, I wasn't going to touch or do a flip turn the right way, like to point all of those things out so that that fine tuning was there. Like that's how people are built. So if you think you're too good for a coach, you're wrong.
Yeah.
right? You're wrong. And so really you just got to learn. You got to learn of what is it about you. It's where we start, right? Like we learn about ourselves on a deeper level than we would have ever considered. And that's how we figure out why I don't have the confidence, why I have the anxiety, why I have the fear of failure, why I'm having the failure to launch, whatever it is for you, right? Like that isolation, all the things. And that's how we uncover that.
Yeah, I always find myself when I'm always um thinking to myself saying, "Hey, like, oh, I'm better than that person or whatever it may be." And then I catch myself and saying, "Hey, like no, like cuz when we rely on statuses to say, "Oh, this person, he's not good enough for me to listen to him. This homeless person, I'm so much better than him." And then you
Mhm.
realize even if a homeless person comes up to me, like there's going to be some valuable insights that every
A
person is going to
homeless
have,
person could be
like
a
whether if
rocket
it's
scientist.
like
He could
gratitude
literally
or
be a rocket scientist that actually had some sort of brain malfunction that, left him incapable of working, and then he lost his house. Maybe it burned down. Maybe, right? Maybe a tornado blew it down. We don't know. And so don't judge. Don't judge by some of the most interesting conversations I've had have been sitting in a coffee shop with a gentleman that was homeless, but one of the most intriguing minds I've ever had a conversation with. So the part of the issue with humanity is that we go through life, we look through our lens, and we judge everybody accordingly to our lens without even bothering to investigate anything, right? Like the person tailgating you on the freeway, you have no idea what's happening in their life. You don't know who
Nope.
they are. You don't know what. Sure, they could have stayed up late last night. They could be running late for a meeting, and sure, it could be their fault. Or guess what? Their kid could have just got hit by a train and they're trying to get to the hospital. So what are you better served to do? Like you don't know them. It's none of your business, actually, right? Like just move over. Give them a second to just fly by. It's literally a nanosecond of your time. Like quit judging. Get into the stance of a learner. Learn how to look at life a little bit differently. My motto is this is my life too. It gets to look, feel, be however I want it to. I get to choose. Well, if that's my motto, I have to give it to every single person that's listening, every person I pass, every being on the planet, right? Like, I don't get to dictate how you experience living. I don't get to tell you what's right or wrong for you. I can tell you if it's wrong for me, right? Like, if you want to go jump off a cliff and do bungee jumping, right? Like, that's cool for you,
Mhm.
right? Like
Yeah,
it's definitely not on my bucket list. I'll watch.
yeah,
Thanks. Right?
mhm.
Anyway, that's my sermon.
Yeah, and I think the way I've kind of countered judging other people in my life is I built the worst version of myself. So I figured out that every time I judge someone, every time we judge someone, it's because we are having this like worst version of ourselves that we would never become. So like for example, when I would see someone fat, I would say, "Oh, I would never want to be that person." And I would judge them for being fat even though it's me insecurity I'm running away from. So I actually built like a concept of this worst self. It's someone that smokes, that someone that's fat, someone that's lazy. These are all attributes I judge other people for. And I built it all into one person. And what I did with that is I actually deployed love to that worst version of myself, saying that, hey, even though he smokes, lazy, fat, and everything else, I still love that person. Like this person can still be loved. And then I was like, that really shook me up. I was like, wow, like that's crazy. Even the worst version of myself that I was running away from, and because of my insecurities, I can actually love that person. And like I now that I like love that person, and I can that person can be loved, I no longer judge people very much. Like it's more like, hey, like this is the way they are. That's awesome, type of thing. And before I would have judged that person because of my insecurities I would run away from. But then once you deploy love to that worst version of yourself, then you can really find a way to really love it, to be honest. And I'm just gonna show you like real fast of what that my horrible drawing is real fast of what that looks like, just because I want to show you how bad my drawing skills are. This is what it looks like. This is my worst version of myself. So this is like my like love circle anyway, like of all like loving my mind, body, like worst self, current self, all that good jazz. And then this is my worst self right here. So it's a beautiful drawing. It's a very
I,
beautiful. I'm an artist in my free time, but
I like
basically I found a way and built the concept of this worst self, so that way I can deploy love to that worst self, and I find a way to love my mind. I figure out a way to love my body, the worst self, current self, future self, my environment, that nurturing love self, that relational
it.
self, and that self-worth self. So, and I deploy love to every single one of those to create that kind of like internal love inside of myself to become a little bit more whole of a person.
That's really awesome.
So yeah. Um, so any thoughts on any of that?
I think that it's, a very effective approach for you, right? Like, so when we find a concept that speaks to us, right? Like, oh, like I've gotta really, like lean in and focus so that I can learn to love me regardless, right? Instead of, when I make a mistake, going into self-hatred. And so I
Yeah.
love that you have like that work, that you're spending that time, that you have the visualizations, the reminders, so that you have that prompt, like, ooh, right? But yes, I think as a general again species, we could all judge ourselves and others more effectively, more appropriately, more kindly, um,
I
and
agree.
and really, oh, there's so much, there's so many things that you could go into with that, right? Like there's, so much stereotyping, there's so much stigma, there's so much, just assuming that goes on, right? Like if you assume the woman that's standing outside of the laundromat on the corner, on a corner in Los Angeles, if you assume that she's an addict, or and just assume that, right? Like, or perhaps you go, it's a woman on a Sunday outside of a laundromat who's mismatched and her hair's not done right, like she's disheveled, but she's doing her laundry. Like why do we go automatically to like some version that is so beneath what we see ourselves, right? Like why can't she just be a regular everyday wife, mother, whoever that went down there in her grubs? Like, who wants to get all gussied up to go to the laundromat? Like, I
Yeah.
remember when I used to have to do my laundry at the laundromat when I was a young mom, right? Like, I didn't get dressed up for the occasion. It was, let me
Mhm.
roll out of bed with my sweats and go to the laundromat on the
Yeah.
weekend on my day off, right? So, anyway, just an illustration of how we as human beings could stand to incorporate the art of pause in our life and the ability to formulate better responses rather than reactions, right? Like that knee jerk instant thought that comes to mind, like fix that,
Yeah.
fix it.
Yeah. I
If
totally
it's
agree.
ugly, if it's ugly, it's up to you to change it to something that's not.
Yeah. I love that. And unfortunately, that's all we have time for today. Please tell the audience how to find you, how to find more about your business, and everything else like that.
I'm going to make it really simple. Um, turning, Turin. Oh, wow. Now I can't spell. Anyway, turning leaves, Leaves, recovery.com. In the top right corner, you can book a complimentary conversation. I love to chat. In the top left corner is my number. I only have one. Super easy. You can send me a text message, give me a call. Um, best way to connect. Of course, you can
Awesome.
Google my name and find me on social media. But
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining today. It
Oh,
was
it's
very
been so
insightful.
fun.
Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for watching. This is the Mind Workshop podcast. We'll catch you next time. Thanks.
Bye.